Welcome to the CompTIA Tech Jobs Report for July 2024. Let's jump right in. The recent release of the BLS Jobs Report showed employment across the U.S. economy increased 206,000 new positions. The national unemployment rate increased to 4.1%. For the tech perspective, let's turn to CompTIA's Chief Research Officer, Tim Herbert. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Andrea.
So, Tim, tell us, what should we know about this latest employment report?
We can think of it as a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation. And on the heels of the momentum from last month, we did have a number of positive indicators. But as so often has been the case recently, we did see a slide back in some of the indicators. And this month is almost a exact reversal of what we saw last month. We had 3 positive indicators and 1 that lagged last month, compared to this month where we had 1 in the positive, and then unfortunately 3 did fall back some. Starting with tech industry employment, we did see on the strength of primarily tech services and software development a gain across technology companies. And in the accompanying chart, it doesn't look like there's much movement, but keep in mind, this is almost 6 million workers. So even just a slight fraction of an increase in one of the bars usually represents thousands of workers. And then tech occupations across the economy. This is where we continue to see quite a bit of volatility. Some months we have a big jump up in employment, and then some months it falls back. And this is really just a reflection of how the Bureau of Labor Statistics tallies that data. So there's always going to be a degree of fluctuation, and we never want to read too much into any one month. But it usually goes hand in hand when we do see a slip in the occupation number. It usually means there will be an increase in the unemployment rate. And this occurs both at a national level as well as within the tech workforce. So we did see an uptick in the unemployment rate. And then job postings were, essentially flat. They're still much higher than they've been recently, and they're not quite at the 12-month high point, but just off of that. So there is some strength there in the employer hiring intent number, but overall, again, just something that we have to accept, that this is a period where there's always going to be periods of positives and then offset by periods of negatives.
On-ramps and pathways into tech careers is a key focus for CompTIA. What insights can you share from the data?
Yeah, that's a really great point that you raised, Andrea. Obviously, it's important to anyone starting their career, job seekers, career changers, that there are lots of opportunities to enter the tech workforce. But it's equally important to employers as well. That they are building and cultivating a foundation of their tech workforce that can grow over time, can advance into more senior level roles, and then the cycle repeats all over again. And it's a healthy dynamic within our labor market, that we have these opportunities for people to enter the workforce, and then over time, with additional experience, training, certification, they can advance. And the data, and this is the perspective of job posting data from our partner, Lightcast. It's been fairly constant over the past couple of years. So right around 50% of employer job postings for technology roles do not specify a 4-year degree. So these could be positions that are 2-year degrees. It could be based on some type of industry recognized credential, or it may not mention any type of requirement at all. It's essentially an open-ended type of position. And while there has been quite a bit of attention, a number of notable employers announced that they were eliminating the 4-year degree requirement from job listings. A number of states have done the same with their tech hiring. So that's an encouraging development, but it really hasn't translated fully across the market. So the hope is that we continue to emphasize that employers should be hiring based on skill, based on experience, based on the ability to do the job. And in some cases, that may mean factoring in four-year degrees or master's degrees or PhDs. But for a lot of job roles, it may mean looking at other types of requirements. The positions that had the highest concentration of job postings that did not specifically mention a four-year degree include a pretty broad mix of various types of network administrator roles, IT support roles, network and systems administrator roles, database administrators, web UI, UX. So that is a nice, I would say, variety of different skills, different job roles, and different career pathways. And this is also, I think, a good reality check for a lot of job seekers. You're probably not going to start out as a high-level cybersecurity engineer. Most employers, they're going to require some degree of experience, some degree of expertise that was developed over time. And this is where we get into the discussion of feeder job roles. So IT support, network administration, those are some of the primary feeder roles into cybersecurity, for example. Database administrators may be a feeder role into data engineering or data science. Web and UI, UX development may be a feeder role into higher level software development positions. And this is something that we try to emphasize, that there are a wide range of pathways, and even starting out at one position may mean taking a lateral move before advancing into a higher level one. And on the topic of skills and validation, obviously employers still need to feel confident that the job candidate they are interviewing has the capacity to perform on the job. And that's where the importance of industry recognized credentials comes in. And this is something that we've been tracking now for many, many years, both in the job posting data, as well as CompTIA's workforce and learning trends. And this is a study conducted among HR professionals. So think of these as the gatekeepers to hiring within any company. So they really set essentially the protocols for how candidates are selected, how they're interviewed, and so forth. And we did see an increase in the number of HR professionals reporting that they rely and they factor in technical certifications into the hiring process. And then among companies that are expecting to increase their tech workforce most aggressively, they're factoring in certifications at an even higher rate, about 1.5 times higher than the benchmark rate. So this is a trend, again, that goes hand in hand with the elimination of four-year degrees from job listings. And again, four-year degrees, they have a place, and this is not to say that they're should never be considered. But for some technical roles, there is often a greater timeliness and greater alignment via certifications. And that's what employers are really looking for.
The last point I wanted to address is remote work. Remote work remains a hot topic. What is the latest on the work from home front?
Yeah, barely a day goes by without remote work making the headlines. There's still lots of coverage from the media perspective, certainly important to workers and employers. I mean, it will probably go down in our lifetimes as one of the biggest workforce trends that we can imagine. And a lot of this was driven by the pandemic, and then obviously it has carried through. And just to put this in perspective, for this most recent month, about 18% of tech job postings for employer hiring specifically mentioned remote or hybrid work. And this is a little bit lower than what we saw during peak pandemic, but we have to keep in mind that even during the peak, it was only around 26, 28% of all job postings. So I think there was often this perception that probably 95% of all hiring was for remote work, and that was simply never the case. And there is a gray area here, meaning that for all of the positions in the darker shaded portion of the chart, oftentimes employers will not specify whether it's remote or whether it's full-time in the office, or usually it's some type of hybrid role. And at times it's because employers, they're leaving it up to the job candidate, and there is a difference. Someone that is working from home but is near the office, or say they are near major airports so they can get to the office for meetings, that's a completely different situation than, say, someone who is working remotely from a tropical island, where it could be very difficult to ever make it into the office. And that's where we see a lot of employers are settling in this middle ground of allowing work flexibility, but also having an expectation that in-person meetings still matter and in-person collaboration still matters. And I think most employees recognize that as well, that simply working from home day in and day out, it can get lonely, it can feel isolating. And you can lose touch of your colleagues, you can lose touch of brainstorming and idea development. So I think the trend line is probably pretty clear here, that we're going to settle in at roughly 20%, and then there's probably an additional 20 to 30% that there's flexibility, and then there's going to be some positions that they are going to be back in the office. And one of the ways that we like to dig into job posting data is by location. And this really tells us a lot in terms of the states that are hiring, the metro areas that are hiring, some of the companies within these areas that are hiring. And I selected just a few examples here. And these are metro areas where they have a very high concentration of hiring for technology job roles that specify remote hiring. And these are only 5 top examples, but there's many, many others. Topeka was at the top of the list. So there was a much higher concentration of tech jobs in Topeka that allowed remote or hybrid work. We also see Madison and Providence, Nashville, Salt Lake City. So a nice mix of different types of cities. Some of these you would probably consider to be a little bit under the radar. They're not usually known as major tech hubs, but it is a good reminder that there is tech hiring everywhere. I'm sure employers in these regions, they are taking the strategic approach that if they offer remote work, they may be able to expand the pool of candidate that they can target. They may be able to get great candidates that maybe they could not get otherwise by not offering remote work. It's something that still ranks very high among workers and employees and job candidates. So there are a couple of storylines here in terms of how employers are navigating remote work and some of the opportunities available to job candidates.
Well, Tim, thank you as always for sharing your insights with us.
Great. Thanks, Andrea.
And we will wrap up this month's Tech Jobs Report. We will see you back here for another CompTIA Tech Jobs Report.